I will fight to the end. Doesn't matter what people say. I will love to the end. Even as the love grows colder, I will hold.
Thanks for joining us today on WNTW 820 AM The Answer. Welcome to our very second Cut to the Chase radio show. My name is Amanda Chase, and I serve as your state senator in the 11th Senatorial District, which includes Chesterfield, Amelia, and Colonial Heights. And I look forward to being your show host each week as we discuss issues most important to our area and to my constituents. I'm thankful for the opportunity to reach more constituents through this radio town hall each week and to get your feedback on each week's topic. Many of the topics that we're going to address on the show are actual issues that my constituents have brought to my attention. I hope you will tune in each Thursday from 4 to 5 to hear more about the issues that affect the 11th Senatorial District in all of Virginia. In case you're tuning in for the first time and you don't know who I am, I'm actually originally a wife, mother of 4 children, 3 teen sons, and a 20-year-old daughter. My husband and I have a financial services business. I'm also a proud Virginia Tech Hokie. Go Hokies. My husband and I grew up in Chesterfield, and I've called Chesterfield home for over 35 years. One thing that I know for sure is that people are tired of out-of-touch politicians. So I've done everything I can to stay in touch and communicate with you, talking to you, my constituents, talking to reporters who all have my cell phone apparently, having town halls, and now this. So I welcome your feedback. If you have a question about today's topic, I invite you to call in. So get out a pen and paper. The number is 804-454-1366, or you may email your questions to info@amandachaseforsenate.com, all spelled out. And we're going to do our best to answer your question on the show. So let's get started. Today we are going to be discussing law enforcement and the community. You know, today's show is going to be in honor of Trooper Junius Walker, who was shot and killed in 2013. And actually, Liz Walker is a very dear friend of mine. Master Trooper Junius Walker was killed. He was killed after the trooper pulled in beside him. It was a disabled vehicle on the shoulder of a southbound Interstate 85 in Dinwiddie County. He's a 40-year veteran with the Virginia State Police, almost near retirement. He's a father of 6, husband of 32 years. His life was tragically cut short, and I just want to remember his family today as they're going through such trying times right now, and praying for justice in that situation. And I texted with Liz earlier today. Liz and I actually are business colleagues together and dear friends. We've actually flown to Florida together on a business trip, and I texted with her earlier today. I know she's listening on the internet right now, so I just want her to know that we're thinking about her today and praying for justice in that situation. So, really want to talk today about the growing concern of our law enforcement becoming targets of racial hostility, and also the concern of African American males of becoming targets of law enforcement. How do we bring healing, comfort, and restore trust? Today we have 2 very special guests. Sergeant Kevin Carroll, he is with Chesterfield County Police, also president of the Fraternal Order Police of Virginia. He has been a patrol officer, a detective, a sergeant, ever since 1986. Boy, that's a long time. He has got lots of awards that just incredible, everything that he's done. He's most importantly a very dear, trusted friend, and I just so appreciate him being on the show today. He's going to be answering questions, and he is live in the studio today. So this week, I also received a letter from a concerned African-American male who is afraid of being targeted and shot by law enforcement because of his skin color. And he wants to know what I could do as a state senator to ensure he would be safe from being targeted. So I'm going to read an excerpt from his constituent letter, from his letter. He says, I'm a law-abiding citizen that feels I should not have to live in the fear that I could be killed by a person that has taken an oath to protect and serve the community for doing nothing wrong. I recognize there are a large population of officers who honor their badges every day and that find the behavior of these officers that perpetrate these killings to be despicable. However, with each passing incident, I'm concerned whether any encounter I have with the police will be with one of the honorable officers or one that seems intent on causing me harm because of my skin color. Is it possible to do something that will eradicate these problematic officers so I don't have to live like this in fear? Kevin, do you want to take a minute just to comment on that?
Sure. Well, I would hope that that would certainly not happen to any individual in our community. We go to great lengths to recruit and train law enforcement officers. They go through rigorous background investigations, which hopefully meters out any type of racial biases that they may have, and those individuals that display anything like that, they're not going to get hired. And then it's a long-term process to go through the background and get hired, and then go through, in some cases, a 32-week long academy, and then another 360 hours of field training. And during that training, they receive training on bias-based policing, on how to not let personal prejudice sway the way that they deal with people in the public. Everybody in this country deserves to be treated equally. That's why the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution the way they did. And an officer does take, as he says, an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of Virginia. And certainly when I tell the officers, when I teach them constitutional law, that it's a very important oath that they're taking, and they need to make sure that, there's a real simple test that I tell them. It's real simple, basic, because I really like to make things at a really easy level for people to understand. Treat people the way you'd want your mother treated, if you love your mother, of course. I mean, really, treat people good. And unfortunately, there are situations that occur in law enforcement that heighten an officer's situational awareness. In Virginia, we have a very strong appreciation of the Second Amendment, and I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. But that also comes with risk, comes with danger, because there are a lot of vehicles that people are traveling in that have guns in them. And so we have to teach our officers how to be careful when they do traffic stops, when they approach cars, because potentially the person in that car could have a weapon. One of the biggest indicators is the actual body language of the individual that you stopped out with and that you're talking with, and how they're treating you also has an effect on how that encounter is going to go.
So, Kevin, I think what you're saying here is that not only do our police officers in that hiring process, they go through this bias training just to make sure that there's not that purposeful discrimination in office, and if it's found out, then they're let go. They're not allowed to continue in the process.
No, that is an excluder. If that pops up during the hiring process, and it's not just here; it's all across the Commonwealth. Whether you're working for a sheriff's department, state police, or a local police department, or a federal law enforcement agency, those are type of excluders that are going to say, no, I'm sorry, you don't have the temperament to be a law enforcement officer. And trust me, we test a lot of people. A lot of people go through testing just to try and apply and get hired, and a lot of them don't make it. And it's for a variety of reasons. Now, I'm not saying they're all have biased problems. Some of them can't shoot, some of them can't drive. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why someone can't be a police officer, but some of it has to do with temperament. And what this gentleman is talking about is, am I going to get someone who's a hothead, for lack of a better term, or am I going to get someone who's level-headed and cool? And, of course, we try and make sure that our officers are even-tempered, level-headed. That's why they go through psychological profiles to determine whether or not they actually have some of the markers that we look for to be a police officer.
So if you were to come across a police officer, because maybe someone in the audience today has come across a police officer where they felt like maybe they were a little bit more aggressive, that type of thing, is there some type of monitoring process that's in place, some type of IDP that's done on a police officer?
Well, Virginia state law requires for localities to have a compulsory process in place for citizens to file complaints and for their complaints to be addressed if they have an encounter with a law enforcement officer that they didn't think went the way it should, and simply making a phone call to that police department, and those departments are going to take those complaints and they're going to follow up on them. They're going to do a thorough investigation. If it's determined that the officer violated the law or violated the policy of the department, then they'll be dealt with. In some cases, depending on what it is, they may actually get terminated.
Very good. Kevin, you and I participated in National Night Out this week, which was a blast. There were probably over 100 officers that paired up with elected officials, and and other folks, and we went out into the communities and visited throughout our district. We visited in neighborhoods and apartment complexes. We had McGruff the dog with us. I love seeing the police officers interact with the children and the adults. Love seeing that. And I also am a firm believer that strong communities are safer communities. I see all the various programs that are conducted in Chesterfield, and like the community reentry programs, heroin recovery, Seniors in Touch, just to name a few. Obviously, your primary job is public safety, and we're so thankful for that. When we get back, we're going to talk about other ways that you're all in the community. So we'll be back in about 5 seconds.
The Chesterfield County Colonial Heights Crime Solvers program needs your help to solve a series of shootings. On Sunday, June 12th, 4 shootings into occupied vehicles involving the use of BB or pellet guns occurred in Chesterfield. They all happened between noon and 4 p.m. The first 2 shootings were in the area of Old Hundred Road near Brandermill. The third was on Genito Road near Hull Street Road, and the fourth was on Philray Road off of South Arch. Investigators are saying that a gold Toyota Camry may have been involved. For more information, visit crimesolvers.net, and if you can help with these shooting cases or have information of any unsolved crime in or fugitive wanted by Chesterfield or Colonial Heights, you can submit a tip anonymously through Crime Solvers. Call 748-0660, click crimesolvers.net, or text 274-637, starting your message with the keyword Watson. Remember, if your tip helps law enforcement, you can receive a cash reward. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and take the time to solve the crime.
Welcome back to WNTW 820 AM The Answer. This is Senator Amanda Chase taking your calls today. Just a reminder, 804-454-1366 if you want to call in and ask your question. I have Kevin Carroll, who's the president of the Fraternal Order of Police of Virginia, here in the studio with me today, and we are discussing law enforcement and the community, keeping residents safe, keeping our law enforcement safe. And right before the break, we were talking about public safety and what other ways, Kevin, are you all in the community working toward positive change and community support?
Well, man, one of the things that the Fraternal Order of Police has sponsored throughout the years is something called our Christmas with a Cop program. And what we do at Christmas time, particularly, we take disadvantaged community members out with uniformed law enforcement officers, whether they be from the sheriff's department or police departments, and we take them Christmas shopping. We take the families, take the children. The money's usually spent on the kids to make sure that they have a nice Christmas. So we buy them clothes and necessities that they need, and certainly at least one toy so they have something nice. And a lot of these things, the big part about this is the officer in uniform with the children builds a real positive image that the child may not be exposed to because, it's like a lot of times as a law enforcement officer in uniform, a parent will see a police officer and say, oh, there's the policeman. If you're bad, he's going to take you away, which is really not the message you want to send to children. You really want to say, look, if you're ever in trouble, that's really actually who's going to help you. And so this helps in these disadvantaged communities, especially because those are the kids that we're bringing in, trying to make positive change happen. And I got to tell you, it's the best program we have every year. It absolutely goes fantastic. We have it sponsored all across the country at Christmas time. As a matter of fact, this year I'll be traveling up to Pennsylvania to pick up 300 toys from the Pennsylvania Lodge that they're going to donate to us to distribute out through our program. And, of course, this all is possible because of the generosity of citizens in the community who donate to the FOP and through our fund drives, and that money is in turn used to sponsor these type of programs.
I think that's an intangible. Sometimes you just cannot put a value on something like a relationship like that, developing those relationships in the community so that when there is an issue, you're not seen as the bad guy, the guy coming to take away one of my family members. Right. If something bad happens, that you're a resource that they can turn to and that they have a positive image of a police officer. I think that's so important, which brings me to my next question. And I know it's one of those topics that's been on many minds, and that was mentioned by Dallas Police Chief David Brown after the shootings in Dallas. Do you think we're expecting too much from our officers?
Well, law enforcement has evolved over the years. I mean, we've actually had to now train our officers in a variety of totally different things that they have to deal with, whether it be mental health issues. Everybody thinks that law enforcement officers are legal experts, and so if they ask them a question about this, that, or the other thing, that we're going to know the answer. What I tell my officers and my compadres is, you're not going to know every answer. What you need to do is know someone who actually has the answer. So, yeah, we've increased a lot of responsibility on our uniformed officers and our detectives and law enforcement in general. There are some things, this has happened probably to budget constraints in other areas. Mental health professionals, for example, when budgets get tight, they start cutting in these areas. And so, hopefully in the future we can expand out some of these other, especially in mental health, to get these people the help that they need. A day doesn't go by that a police officer is not dealing with somebody that is having a rough time, whether they're contemplating suicide or they've attempted a suicide, or they're dealing with some kind of illness or some family member who's sick or someone that they lost, a loved one. And a lot of the times they reach out to law enforcement because they're at their wit's end and they don't know what else to do. And so, yeah, we've had to train our guys to be counselors, grief counselors, and, of course, they respond to all these calls. When someone dies, whether it be a car crash or a natural death or a heroin overdose, which is running rampant throughout the country right now, the law enforcement officers are the ones who are there. We're the ones who deal with the families. We're the ones who make notification to their loved ones that their child has passed away. And so this takes a toll, not just on the community member, but it also takes a toll on the law enforcement officer. I've had to make several, more than I care to, death notifications in my career, and I can tell you that it's not the thing that anybody looks forward to. But we try and make sure that we teach our officers to be sensitive and have humility and handle it with grace and dignity, so that, because it's the real trying part is coming when you notify those people.
Right. Our officers are people too, and they have families. I know a lot of my friends are police officers, and, one thing that we talk about is just, the amount that they're paid, and, comparing that to teacher salaries and other professions, it's definitely not known as one of the higher paid salaries. I mean, a lot of folks are doing this because they feel it as a calling and something they get into that they want to do. And so I'm sure that there are pressures, family pressures to provide for a family. And I know one of the issues that came to me during the General Assembly was wage compression issues, where you have officers that have been there for years, even decades, who are getting paid about the same as entry-level folks that are coming in. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, since 2008, when the economy took a downturn, it certainly put a crunch on all of the budgets, not just for the citizen, or I say citizen, community members at home, or people who go out and work every day and run businesses and work very hard to generate funds for their families, which in turn generate tax revenue for governments. But because of that, when property values dropped, it shrank the budget. And so governments had to cut. In some cases, they cut personnel, which is the biggest part of any budget. But that also created problems on salary and staffing. And certainly law enforcement is the number one priority of government, to make sure that people are safe. If you don't have a safe community, everything else is put at risk. So, yeah, it did create salary compression in many cases, especially for state employees, state troopers, sheriff's deputies, that, because the state budgets were so tight and we didn't have an increase in growth, there were no raises for these employees throughout the year. So it does make it difficult for them to make ends meet, and it does make it difficult for us to recruit new police officers to come and work when they get out of college and they have large debt due to student loans, and now they're faced with saying, yes, we're going to start you off for this, and it's going to take you a really long time for your salary to go up because we're not giving raises. And that's part of, that happens with government budgets.
I know when you and I were talking earlier, you were talking about the number of vacancies that we have right now are quite a few.
Well, there's vacancies all across the country in law enforcement. I travel as state president to all different states, and I meet with the state leaders of other FOPs. And recruiting is tough right now. Some people have really decided that law enforcement's not what they want to do. The good thing is we still have good young Americans that believe in the Constitution, that want to serve. And so either they're going into the military because they want to serve their country, or they're coming in law enforcement because they want to serve their country.
So in 30 seconds, I was just thinking, some people may not be familiar with the Fraternal Order Police. Can you tell me kind of who you all cover?
Well, we're a fraternal organization, largest in the world, with over 325,000 members.
All right. When we get back, we'll finish talking about that. We'll be back in about 5 minutes.
I will fight to the end. Doesn't matter what the world brings against me. I will fight to the end. Doesn't matter what people say. I will love to the end. Even as the love grows colder, I will hope.
Welcome back to WNTW 820 AM, The Answer. This is your host, Senator Amanda Chase. And I have here in the studio, Kevin Carroll, President of the Fraternal Order Police of Virginia. We're discussing law enforcement and the community. And, I want to give a special shout out right now to Detective Kevin Bacon, who's listening. He's with Crime Solvers, and we're delighted that he's listening. Hope you're listening as well and taking good notes, because we are going to have a very special guest coming on as well, John Jones. He is the Executive Director of the Virginia Sheriff's Association. He served in that capacity since 1977. And he currently manages one of the most influential criminal justice organizations in Virginia, with 122 sheriffs, 8,500 deputy sheriff members. John started his public safety career at a very young age of 16 as an emergency dispatcher for the South Hill, Virginia Police Department before 911 systems existed. So we're going to welcome John to the show today. John, are you there? Let's try that again. John, are you there? Okay, we're going to work on getting John on the line. And while we're doing that, we're going to continue to talk with Kevin Carroll in regards to, we were talking about wage compression issues, and we were talking about his role with the Virginia Fraternal Order Police and his roles and responsibility. And you were telling us before the break, Kevin, exactly Fraternal Order Police, what does that mean to the everyday person on the street? What is the Fraternal Order Police?
Well, back in 1915, two Pittsburgh police officers decided that they wanted to come up with an organization to help advocate for better working conditions and better salaries and pays. And so they started an organization, and they didn't want to call it a union, so they called it the Fraternal Order Police. And it's grown to over 325,000 members nationwide. And I think we got John now, don't we?
Yeah, I'm here.
Here he is.
Okay.
I'm John Jones with the Virginia Sheriff's Association. It's good to be on this afternoon.
Hey, I can hear you. That's great. We're so glad, John, that you're on the show today. And I'm enjoyed working with you during the General Assembly, my very first session, but definitely not yours.
No, I've been around with the sheriff for quite a while. I think I just started my 40th year as Executive Director of the Virginia Sheriff's Association 3 days ago on August the 1st.
Wow. Well, congratulations on your anniversary. That is fantastic. And I know Kevin and I were sitting here talking about morale of officers and the interest, hiring situations. You and I during the General Assembly were talking about wage compression and, trying to correct that issue and how we basically provide funding for our police and making sure they have the right equipment and those types of things. Do you want to talk a little bit about the wage compression issue?
Yeah, that's a pretty important issue for the sheriffs and deputy sheriffs. We have right at 10,000 deputy sheriffs in Virginia, about almost 9,000 are members of the Virginia Sheriff's Association. Compression means the deputy sheriff has been there a long time, is making pretty much the same thing as a recruit, because the guy that's been there a long time hadn't gotten a pay raise. And the reason that's happened is because there have been very few cost of living raises. You keep bringing people on at the bottom, and they keep making about the same thing as the guy that's been there, and they move up together, and therefore it's called what we say is compression. The salary ranges are compressed together, and it demoralizes the officers, because they're not being rewarded. If you can believe it, 2 years ago we had deputy sheriffs around the state that qualified for food stamps if they lived up with a family, had a wife and 2 kids, and only the deputy worked. We had deputies actually that were drawing food stamps. That was limited a little bit a year ago when the budget was introduced and it was approved by the General Assembly. So we all go back down to the General Assembly and try to keep up with the base pay, and we also try to keep up with compression. And we were fairly successful in the 2016 session, but then, lo and behold, we lost it all. And the reason we lost it is because the budget, as approved, provides that salaries for public employees, which include troopers and deputies and all state employees, that's the first thing to go if there's a shortage of revenue. And in the budget, there's language that says if it meets the trigger and it's less than 1%, it's kind of complicated. No need to go into it here, but we didn't quite get the revenue that was projected. So all of our deputy sheriffs lost all the pay raises that were in the budget. We had some good pay raises in it. We are devastated by that. So what that means is that not all deputy sheriffs will lose their raise, but some of the deputies will lose them. A lot of them will, because they don't get supplemented by the locality. The deputies, for example, in Chesterfield, they're fortunate enough where the Board of Supervisors will pay extra and they'll supplement it. And that's the case in many localities, but in probably 30% of them, they don't get any more than what the state gives, so those deputies won't get a raise. And the starting salary is deplorable. That's been a priority.
Yeah,
sure.
It's heartbreaking when you see in the media, what's going on with our media. When we come back from the break, we're going to take probably like a 1-minute break, and we'll come back and finish discussing this. Heartbreaking.
Okay.
Welcome back to WNTW 820 AM, The Answer. This is Senator Amanda Chase, your state senator. I'm a servant of the people, and I am so happy to be here today and so happy to have Kevin Carroll, president of the Fraternal Order Police of Virginia, in the studio, and John Jones, who is the executive director of the Sheriff's Association, by phone. We are so glad to have both of you all here today. And we finally get 8 minutes to discuss our next topic. I'm really concerned as not only a state senator, but also as a mom of 4 kids wanting to ensure that her community is safe, is that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're taking care of our police officers. They're our first role of defense in the fight against crime. And so we want safe communities and we want safe businesses. And so we need to do our best to take care of our law enforcement and also address the concerns that we mentioned earlier to make sure that everybody, all people, feel safe. And so what we're going to talk about next, body cams came up in the last General Assembly. I thought maybe we could do is talk a little bit about body cams and their introduction. And I think John, do you want to take a crack at that one and tell us your opinion?
Body cams was an interesting topic, and we had sheriffs right out of the chute saying, we need to do body cams. We had local police actually putting body cams on. And when we found out, there were a lot of advocacy groups on both sides that said, we're going to mandate body cams. And when we looked into it, it's a very, very expensive proposition. And to the surprise of a lot of people, we found out that one of the most expensive elements of a body cam is the extra work it'll take from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office to review every item of every body cam. For example, if you have 4 officers show up at a scene and there's an altercation and it's 20 minutes, that's 80 minutes of body cam footage the Commonwealth Attorney is going to have to look at. That came out as a surprise, or I guess, it's a bump in the road, and somebody would have to pay for that. So then the study commission and the General Assembly decided, well, maybe we need to slow down on mandating body cams, and let's take a look at best practices. And we're lucky because we have a lot of localities that are showcases around the country. We've got some local police departments and sheriff's offices that do have body cams. You've got to have storage. You've got to have policies. You can't just use a body cam anywhere. For example, if you have a rape victim or a victim of sexual assault, you can't just show up and interview that person on a body cam and then it gets FOIA'd, and the average guy off the street FOIAs it, looks at it, and puts it on Facebook. You can't do that. If you have an officer to go into a home for a complaint, as a matter of courtesy, you just can't run a body cam in someone's home in every situation. And so these are some of the things that you need to slow down and look at. You know, what you see on TV is just that. It's out in public. It's what anyone would see when they're driving down the road, and you get out and you got your body cam or all these other cameras that everybody has. That's one thing, but I think a lot of folks didn't think through everything that a body cam relates to. So,
sure. Especially the storage.
There were 2 or 3 bills put in that mandated it, and those bills were carried over. They didn't pass, and we need to slow down and look at it and let it take its course. You know, some of the stuff has got to shake out in the courts. And so that's where we were with it. We didn't want to mandate it, but we know sheriffs wanted to use it, so we need to go slow.
What would you say is the attitude of the sheriffs and even police officers in regards to body cams? Do you think that they see it as a good thing, that it kind of protects them? And, you know, we always say a picture's worth 1,000 words, to be able to replay that video and see what actually happened.
No question about it. And even before we had body cams, we had dash cams where you'd have the camera in the dashboard of the car and it activated when you got the blue lights on. And time and time again, you would stop people, and they didn't really realize how they acted and what they did until you bring them in later. When they sober up, you show them the footage, and they go, oh, okay, I didn't realize I was acting that way. And, you know, that's what happened. So, yeah, it has been a lifesaver for the officer, and it certainly is something that many, many sheriffs and deputies appreciate using. They do use.
And I would imagine that, you know, as you're pulling people over, you know, sometimes they may be, you know, it could be mental illness. It can be, you know, they're under the influence. Maybe they don't remember exactly what they did. So when they, you know, get in court, maybe they don't remember things clearly. So to have that body cam image, to be there to kind of let them know, because they mentally weren't there, but, you know, the body cam was able to video and capture what actually happened. So, you know, Kevin and I were talking earlier about what is being done to support our law enforcement officers, especially mental health, because you all see so much. I mean, y'all are usually the first responders on the scene, and whether it's a severe car accident or you're walking into a shooting, you know, we've seen so many tragic situations that have occurred across the nation, and helping them to deal with the trauma or the accountability to make sure that they aren't pushed too far psychologically or mentally. What is being done, in your estimation, to support our law enforcement?
I think that the best thing that's been done by the General Assembly, and I hear it from one end of the state to the other, what we call the drop-off centers. The deputy sheriff, the police officer picks up someone on an ECO, emergency custody order. There are not many families that haven't been touched by some form of mental illness or know someone that has. So you pick the person up. You know, a few years ago, and even still now in the rural areas, that deputy and that police officer, we have to hold on to them and transport them for an evaluation, take them to a mental health services. It can tie up a deputy sheriff 2 shifts, and that means you change shifts, and it takes 2 deputies, and all of the time we're losing deputies in that rural county to answer 911 calls. So the best thing we've seen recently is the funding and placement of the drop-off centers. It's working. The deputy can pick the person up, drop them off, they do their evaluation. We still have to go back and transport, and we're looking at alternative transportation. It's okay for a police officer and a law enforcement officer to transport someone that's violent and they're a public safety risk, but it's not okay to transport a geriatric patient. It's demeaning. We don't want to put them in the back of a sheriff's car, and to transport them, it shouldn't be happening, and it happens way too much in Virginia. There are many, many horror stories about that, but they don't have any other way to get there. And so we've got a pilot program in the southwestern part of the state in which we are using a more humane, if you will, a way to transport. And
John, we've got about 10 seconds left, and I don't want to cut you off. I apologize.
Yeah.
But we've got about 10 seconds left, and I just want to, first of all, thank you so much for being on today's show. If you want to hang around, we've got about 3 more minutes left to the show. So if you want to stick around, we'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back to WNTW 820 AM The Answer. This is Senator Chase is your host today on Cut to the Chase Radio. And we're going to close. We've got about 4 minutes left. I've got John Jones, Executive Director of the Virginia Sheriff's Association. I also am honored to have Kevin Carroll, President of the Fraternal Order of Police of Virginia, here in the studio today. And the last topic that we're going to talk about is our peer support program. And I'm going to ask Kevin to speak in regards to the peer support program to support and help our police officers.
Thanks, Amanda. Over the years, we've had developing programs across the country and across the Commonwealth where officers are actually trained in how to recognize stressors that are affecting their peers and actually act in the capacity of a peer supporter, what we call it, someone who they can actually talk with confidentially about the issues that are affecting them. And if an officer, when talking to a peer supporter, realizes that it's something that's much more traumatic that needs to be addressed, then part of these programs are on-staff clinical psychologists that the officers can be referred to and go and seek treatment and have someone to talk to and get help. And in many cases, this could even lead to the family members being brought in cases where they may end up be going through tough times, maybe get divorced, lose a loved one, those kind of things. So the program is really fantastic. I know I've been part of it since 2000, so it's a really good program.
John, do you all have a similar program with the Sheriff's Association to a peer support program?
I think it's going to depend on what locality you're with. I remember the case we had in Buchanan County in one incident in which 2 deputies were killed and 2 deputies were shot. We sent people in from all over the state to help those other deputies that were still there. They were saying, I think I'm going to get out of the business. And it didn't happen, fortunately. We had an awful situation, but we patch it together as best we can in the rural areas, and they help each other. And I know that we have sheriffs all the way from Arlington ready to send deputies and support people down to Southwest Virginia. So we do it. We probably do it in a little bit different way.
John, Kevin, thanks so much for being on today's show. We encourage you guys to tune in again next week from 4 to 5 p.m. That's right. You can go to chaseforsenate.com. We're going to be working on a lineup for you so you can see what's going to be coming up in the weeks ahead. Next week, we're going to have Brian Moran, who is the Secretary of Homeland Security and Public Safety, on the show next week. We're really excited to have him. We also have some other special guests who are pending, but we will always have experts each week. We'll be talking about the heroin epidemic, the opioid epidemic. And so we encourage you to tune in next week. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Definitely go to my Senator Amanda Chase Facebook page. Feel free to put your comments there. Feel free to email us at info@amandachaseforsenate.com. And we hope you join us again this time.
Thanks, Amanda, for having us. And thanks, John.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.